Hey Commander Crew, it's Brian, and today we're going over a brand new deck tech for one of the coolest commanders, I think, from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, and that, of course, is Calamity, Galloping Inferno. I call this little deck Horsemen of Calamity. Basically, the reason I think Calamity is so cool is that she makes a bunch of copies of creatures that we control, and we're just going to outvalue our opponents out of the game. So how she works is she's got haste and saddle 1, and saddle pretty much just means you can tap a creature with and this is case 1, so power 1 or greater, or any amount of creatures, and when Calamity attacks, she creates a token copy of it, has to be non-legendary though, of any of the creatures that saddled it, just one token copy, and then you make a second token copy of any of the creatures that saddled it. So you're making 2 token copies for each time that Calamity attacks, and it's just a super fun deck, very cheap. You can see towards the bottom of my screen that this on Moxfield, it's only $58.13, give or take, shipping and handling. So pretty reasonable, I would say, for a new commander deck, pretty beginner friendly. But let's get into sort of the game plan. First off, we really need to start ramping into our commander so we can start doing some of the fun stuff. Now, Calamity is 6 mana, so get a bit tricky to be able to get to that point and then be able to abuse her. So we gotta ramp her out real quick. So we have a lot of artifact ramp here. I've included in this Arcane Signet. I included Curse of Opulence in here because it's making gold tokens, right? But basically, these are a bunch of just low mana value artifacts that are gonna help us get to our game plan. And you could add a bunch of more 2-drop mana rocks. I would say that is, a good way to go about it. But I think some of the extra ones that here, like Hazard's Monument, Glittering Stockpile, Cursed Mirror, Stone Speaker Crystal, they all give us a bit extra value, right? So Stone Speaker Crystal, for example, is gonna, hit out any of the graveyard decks that we're playing against, and there are so many of those out there. You definitely need some pieces. So if you take this out of your build, I would recommend putting in some other cards that maybe can deal with graveyard shenanigans. And then I think Unstable Obelisk in any red or black deck kind of needs this, just because you need a way to deal with those pesky enchantments or permanents that, the colors that you're playing have a hard time dealing with. Unstable Obelisk can do that for you, even though it is a pretty high cost. But we've got lots of artifact ramp. We'll get back to this card draw package here. We're also running a lot of creature ramp, right? Pretty much the game plan of this deck is you're playing low to the ground creatures, and you're getting one of these out, right? You got 9 of them, and they're all making treasures except for these 2, which put basic lands, and Scampering Surveyor can put a cave onto the battlefield tapped. But basically, you want one of these out, and then when Calamity comes out, you want to be able to copy 2 of these to increase your mana production even more. And that would really help get you further ahead on future turns, right? Because we do have a lot of big finishers in this deck that need a lot of mana, and so being able to get out Calamity on turn 4, turn 5, and get us even more treasures, even more lands, it's really important. Also, some low to the value creatures and cards here that help us with card draw early and late on in the game. Of course, you've got Circumender. Whenever it leaves the battlefield, you draw a card. So if you're copying it with Calamity, you get 2 card draw, right? Filigree Familiar is very similar. It's a death trigger, but that actually works perfectly with Calamity because you sacrifice the tokens at the beginning of the end step. You're not exiling them like some of these other effects in these colors tend to do so. So honestly, yeah, it's definitely an interesting, not a ton of card draw. You could probably do better here, but I think this is pretty good to get where we need to be. So creature ramp, card draw, and artifact ramp, pretty much the early game plan of this deck. We do want a couple extra combat cards, right? Because we get 2 token copies for Calamity every time she attacks, right? So we definitely want a couple ways to do that. Now, if you were going to upgrade this deck based off of budget, I'd probably take these 2 out and put some better cards in there, but these are some pretty cheap ways, under $1. I know this says $1.99 for Card Kingdom, but you can probably get this under $1 elsewhere, that really give you these extra combats and really help your commander go even further in the game. And then it helps that Scourge of the Throne is also a creature, so if you wanted to copy it with your commander, you could do that as well. We do have this extra value package, but we'll get to that later, because I really want to go over some of the finishers of this deck, some of the cards that we really want to be copying with our commander, right? Angrath's Marauder is such a good card. If a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. And, you know, if you have 3 copies of these on the battlefield, right? So you play this, attack it with Calamity, make 2 copies of it, right? Now all your stuff is dealing twice damage, and then times 2 again is 4 damage, and then times 2 again is 8 times the damage, right? So this really closes out games pretty quickly. Angrath's Marauders, there's a good reason it's 7 mana, all right? So definitely really good there. Fanatic Emojis, a cheaper version, but it's going to deal damage when it enters the battlefield equal to your devotion to red. So even if it's just this and Calamity on the battlefield, and you make 2 token copies of it, right? The 2 token copies are both going to trigger, and you're going to have 5, right? So you deal 5 damage to each opponent twice. So really good there. Can help, you know, finish games quickly, and the lower mana value makes a bit more sense there. Havoc Eater. This is a card I think you could maybe take out, but a good flyer, and enters the battlefield, it's going to go to your opponent's creatures. And then Havoc Eater gets bigger the bigger the creature that goaded it. So really useful if you're still in like sort of a standstill, right, with 3 other players. Very nice way you go to each creature, like 1 creature from each opponent, and getting 2 copies of this that are attacking are also, you know, it's just gonna, you know, make your opponents have to deal with each other a lot more than dealing with yourself. Mob Rule wins games. You'll hear me say that a lot. I love Mob Rule. It's a super cheap way. It's like a budget insurrection, but this card has blown me out several times. I've used it to win games, especially if you're in that combat meta. Mob Rule is definitely a way to go. Also, gain control of creatures, and you can use Calamity's effect on any non-legendary creatures you steal. Like if say someone has a Runescarred Demon or some other really good card, you know, Mob Rule is really going to help out there and help get you even more value from colors outside of just red, but it can also be a way to finish the game. Probably the best way to finish the game in this deck, Portraiser, 5 mana. When it deals combat damage to a player, untap each creature. After this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase. And it can't attack a player it has already attacked this turn. So here's the thing, it's actually really kind of a bit of a combo with your commander, right? Because you're tapping it, and then you're getting 2 token copies of it that are attacking when you attack with Calamity. And so if one of those connects, you get an extra combat. And then if another of those connects, you get an extra combat. And I could have put this in the extra combat section over here, but this really is a finisher, right? Because you can sort of get a pseudo-infinite here as long as you can get Portraiser in one of the tokens on an opponent, right? Because when the copies enter, they're not actually attacking any players that attack this turn. So as long as you can keep your commander alive, and throughout all these combats, which is very unlikely. I am typically not a guy to include a lot of infinites in my play group, but this is sort of like a pseudo-infinite that's going to put you really far ahead in the game and deal a lot of damage, if not take out 1 or 2 other players. So definitely a finisher in this deck. Then we got Spawn of Thraxes. You know, mono red deck, I've always wanted to use this card, really. It deals damage to any target equal to the number of mountains you control. This is, you know, was printed before they made that change, so it's actually any target, right? So you can deal that damage to any creature. So typically we're going to have, you know, 5 to 7 when this is out, right? So dealing 5 damage to any target every time it enters is really good. And then, you know, especially with these creatures like Solemn, Simulacrum, or Scampering Surveyor that give us more basic lands, it's going to help us out tremendously and deal more damage. So definitely a finisher. And then the last finisher of the deck I wanted to talk about, Stalking Vengeance. Just having this on board when Calamity's out is great in particular. Some other extra value stuff we want to add, Trumpeting Carnosaur, definitely a super strong hitter in this deck. Every time it enters the battlefield, you're discovering 5. That is crazy good value, right? You want to keep that value going, and you're gonna get so far ahead if you get 3 copies of these. Trumpeting Carnosaur is one of the best cards in this deck for sure. Anzrag's Rampage, because we have so many creatures in this deck, even if you're destroying 1 or 2 artifacts, it's pretty much just searching the top few cards of your deck and you get a free creature from among them. Super great. Another similar card, Industrial Advancement. When you sacrifice your creature at the end step, you can have this trigger resolve before your Calamity trigger. And what happens is you get to because mana values are copyable aspects of a card, you get to reveal the top however many cards. Usually it's going to be, even if it's one of the small creatures like 3 or 2, right? Looking at the top 2 cards, putting any creature on the battlefield, so good. Goblin Bombardment also helps take, give you a little extra value from having to sack your creatures at the end of the turn. And then Clone Shell just sort of kind of pops off as well. When it dies, you get to, pretty much get a bunch of free spells from that as well. So some fun cards here in the extra value stuff. And then we have a few ways to help our commander get through, right? We're constantly attacking with Calamity, and a 4/6, not terrible stats at all, but you really want to be able to get through and protect your commander, and I think these cards really do that well. Temur Battle Rage giving a double strike, because if you're always going to have that ferocious power 4 or greater, is really nice, and giving it the trample is helpful too. Sticky Fingers is a way to give your commander minutes, but also early game can help ramp you out, which is really nice, and then you get card draw when if someone kills your commander. Molten Primordial is really cool, as well as Coercive Recruiter. They sort of help steal your opponent's cards. Kind of what we talked about earlier for the mob rule that we saw up here, but yeah, Molten Primordial does something very similar, and Coercive Recruiter, we have a lot of pirates in here making treasures, so can also help out, and also procs if we have the 2 Calamity triggers targeting Coercive Recruiter as well. So honestly, those are ways to sort of get blockers out of the way. Key to the City makes it unblockable, and then Hellspur Posse Boss makes these mercenaries, and it gives them haste, right? So it's going to give them haste, and they're going to be able to buff Calamity up so that, our opponents are deterred from blocking and killing our commander with like a bigger creature, right? So that can help as well. Mirror Shield is also a good card, right? Because it pretty much gives it Death Touch and destroys any creatures that blocks it, and Hexproof, so definitely a good way to protect your commander, especially in a budget build like this. But there are probably better options outside of budget, but right now I think this is a really good card. And then just some removal, right? Some of the cards we want to be copying are going to be removing our opponent's creatures, whether it's exiling them with Duplicant, or dealing 3 damage, or having Markov Enforcer fight them. Steel Hellkite is a really great way, because the copies, if they come in and they deal damage to an opponent, you can pay any amount of mana and sort of destroy whatever on their board is equal to that mana value. So that's helpful there. We do have Blasphemous Act and Chain Reaction as board wipes. I recommend running 3 typically. 2 you can probably get away with if you have a lot of removal. Like, I feel like a lot of our creatures can deal with some of the things we've got going on. A lot of our damage-based stuff, finishers, help deal with the board a lot more, so we can get away with 2 board wipes. We also have got a Braid, Chaos Warp, Wild Magic Surge, Zoyawa's Justice, and Meteor Golem to sort of get rid of, those pesky artifacts, enchantments that Red typically has a hard time dealing with, but, we've got a couple as well that sort of get any and all of them out, so that can be helpful. And then we've got lands. We've got 34 lands, but including one of these extra value pieces up here, which is the Kazul's Fury. We've actually got 35. I think 35 is a solid number for a mid-range deck. I know there are a high amount of 7 drops in here, but like I said, I think we're ramping out. We're getting a lot of treasures. We don't need really too many more than 35 lands. Now, a different way you could go with this deck, I do want to point out, is because it's mono red, you could really go into an artifact theme, right? And really play into some of those death triggers that happen when you have to sacrifice your tokens at the end of the turn. Triplicate Titan is one that comes to my mind. Wormcoil Engine. You could really run a mainly artifact package here and make a lot of it. You can still have a lot of great synergies with the cards you have going on here, especially these artifacts that draw you cards, these artifacts that get you lands. You could run stuff like Goblin Engineer, even though that's like more of an expensive card, to sort of get, your Triplicate Titan out of the graveyard, make 2 copies with Calamity, and, get 2 death triggers at that, and getting 6 tokens. So definitely, some cool opportunities here. All right, playtesting this deck, we're starting off with 2 lands. I think this is risky enough that I would probably keep myself, so let's just go for it, see what happens. And right there, we were rewarded with a land. Love that. Turn 2, I know the counter says turn 3, but that's wrong. Turn 2, we'll play this Castle Embereth. Turn 3, we're going to play a ramp piece. So we could do Patron of the Arts, which gets us a treasure, or Hazard's Monument, which is going to make all our red creatures cost 1 less. I think that's the better play. We'll play that, and then we will draw. So turn 4, we're playing another land, and we're going for 2 mana. We're going to cast this Patron of the Arts, and then we have 2 mana to hold up for a Braid to get rid of a creature that's being annoying or an artifact. And I think that is the play for this turn. And then turn 5, again, that counter is wrong. Turn 5, we don't draw a land, but our commander only costs 5 because of Hazard's Monument, so we're going to play it by tapping 5. And then we're going to saddle it with our Patron of the Arts, and then we'll attack in. We'll make 2 more copies of Patron of the Arts that when they enter and when they die are going to give us treasures. So Patron of the Arts, definitely a strong hitter here. And so after this turn, we'll have 4 treasures, and we've got a few cards in hand that we really want to play. So we know this game is probably going to go pretty well. Let's go ahead and go into another game here. 2 lands with a ramp piece and a 3-drop ramp piece as well. I say we keep it. Typically, you really love to see that. If you've got 2 lands and you've got an early ramp piece that you can play on turn 2 and a creature that you want to play, it's typically worth your time. So we'll go ahead and keep this one as well. Okay. Hazard's Monument again. Mountain, Wayfarer's Bauble. Next, we will do... interesting. I think, of course, we want to do the Castle Embereth, which comes in untapped because we control a mountain. And we will pay 2 to sacrifice the Wayfarer's Bauble and grab us another mountain. Alright, and now we are on turn 3, so we'll draw for turn. Play a mountain. Actually, we could play this tapped Forgotten Cave and then play Hazard's Monument or Plundering Barbarian. I think the plan is if we play Hazard's Monument, we won't get to play Calamity and get extra value off of playing Calamity the next turn. So I think we go for the Forgotten Cave into Plundering Barbarian, which gets us a treasure. Or we have the mana. Oh, actually, no, we don't. So we could destroy an artifact if we wanted to, but I'm not gonna. I would say we would go for a treasure here. All right, and then turn 4. It's already turn 4. Play a land and cast the commander. We get 2 more treasures, or we can get a treasure and destroy an artifact if we got a pesky artifact on the board. And then we can go from there. We've got some really good stuff here. Mirage Mirror to help get us some value from our opponent's stuff that's giving them value. Hidden Volcano, if we run out of cards in hand, can help us in the later game. So definitely a strong start here, and I would say a good run. Well, thanks so much for watching the deck tech. I really had a good time, and I hope you enjoy this deck. I'm gonna build it myself, and I hope you try it out as well. Maybe see if you like it, make some changes, let me know what you did. You can find the deck list in the video description below, and always hit me up on Twitter. I'm at RedFalcon207, and if you have any questions, you can ask me there. But other than that, appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.